Welcome to Let's Grab a Cup podcast. This is where we talk about leadership, authenticity, resiliency. We provide a place to hold space for one another. I'm your host, Adam Sturgeon. So why don't you grab a cup of coffee or tea or whatever suits you at this moment. Let's dive in. Good morning. My name is Adam Sturgeon, and this is the Let's Grab a Cup podcast. Today I get to record with Detective Castillo. Detective Castillo worked in LAPD for over 30 years, and he grew up in East LA and did some primitive years of his life down in San Diego County. After being a detective, he just retired and now is working as a resident detective for the Dordulain Law Group, and he is advocating for victims of childhood sex abuse and adult sexual assault. So I know you spent a lot of years in this area, Detective Castillo, but I really appreciate you coming on, talking to me this morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Adam. Thanks for having me. It's a great honor and I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on. You have way more experience doing this stuff than I do. So I do appreciate you coming in and indulging me, and hopefully the listeners get something out of this conversation. I know you're working hard out there, so I appreciate you coming on this morning.
Absolutely.
So let's get started. Really, I like to start with just kind of find out more about you and, how you grew up and your life and just what kind of got you through your younger years and into this world of policing.
Yeah, you know what? Thank you for asking that because sometimes I still, pinch myself to realize that a young boy being raised by a single mom with two older sisters in the heart of East Los Angeles, where it was gang infested, where I actually decided I had to do one of two things. I either join a gang or I don't, right? And it was part of the survival. So one of the things I feared the most growing up, when I use the word fear for my mom, I kind of pretty much mean more of a reverence fear for my mom. So I feared my mom and I feared the gang next door. And so I decided to just do my best to honor my mom and so that's how it started. So because I was in East LA, the LA County Sheriff's Department had jurisdiction in the area that I lived in, and that's the East Los Angeles Sheriff's Office. And I remember vividly I was probably about 5-6 years old when I started to notice this deputy sheriff drive up and down our street patrolling. And every time I see him, I go, wow, he looks pretty cool. And I could tell he was going somewhere, and sometimes it's with lights and sirens. And one day I actually called the police because our car was stolen from inside our garage. And I remember it was an early Sunday morning, and who shows up? This deputy sheriff that I saw. And when I saw him get out of the car and I see him, up close and personal, he looked like the Superman in a deputy sheriff uniform. He was solid. He was built with muscles, and he had that clean cut haircut. Glasses. I mean, he literally did look like Clark Kent in a deputy sheriff's uniform. And I was like in awe. And I was like, wow. So I had to translate for my mom because she's only Spanish speaker, and so I told him what happened, and lo and behold, as a young kid, 3 days later, we get a phone call in the middle of the night, like 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning. And they say, it's a sheriff's department and we found your car. And I'm thinking, and again, I have to translate for my mom.
Right.
I'm still half asleep. And the guy says, hey, we have your car. Can you ask your mom if so-and-so had permission to drive it? And so I asked her, she said, no, I don't even know who that is. Okay, well, he's going to jail. You guys can come pick up your car. So in my mind, I'm thinking Superman, man, he caught the bad guy and he returned our car. That was pretty cool. And I believe that was the beginning of the seed being planted in my heart to want to do that. Hey, I want to catch bad guys. I want to help. And I believe that was the beginning of now, pursuing this career in law enforcement.
How old were you at that time?
At that time, when I first spotted him in our neighborhood, I was probably 5 or 6. But by that time, I had to call the police. I must have been like 7 or 8, somewhere around 3rd grade, and or even 2nd grade. But yeah, it was pretty cool to see that play out, and I was really like in awe of what just happened.
Yeah, I think that's important because I mean, we don't. I think we don't think about that sometimes when we're making that impression on young children out there. They see us come up to do whatever it is, whatever investigation it is, and they are in awe of us. But we think of it as another call, but for them, it's like this is the world. So
Yeah, and
that's a great story, being impressed by that. I know at that age, I mean, I think a lot of us starting in that time, like 5, 6, 7 is like when when you want to be a police officer.
yeah, yeah. And then eventually we ended up moving out to Carlsbad for my latter years of my junior high years and high school years. Right, that's where I spent my teens in the city of Carlsbad, which is just south of Oceanside in San Diego County, and and I was kind of pursuing a career in to be a teacher. I was working with kids. I was the program youth director at the Carlsbad Boys and Girls Club
Okay.
for their preschool and after school programs. And I was only 16 years at the time, but they saw something in me and they actually promoted me as the director. So I actually was supervising people older than me in these programs, but I was really connecting with teachers, people in the community, parents. And there was a parent that was a police officer at the Carlsbad Police Department. His name was Dean Spinos, and he uh, he invited me one day when he was picking up his son and at the program. He says, "Hey, would you like to go on a run along?" And I said, "Sure." And you know, coming from LA and Carlsbad, it's day and night, and so
Yeah, a little bit different.
yeah, a little bit different. But I really liked the whole showing up to work, and I saw him, get into the men's locker room and putting on his uniform, his vest, his badge, his gun belt, and then go to roll call. And just watching that alone, right there was like, wow, this is so cool. I want to do this. And that really sparked uh, my interest to maybe not pursue a teaching career, but law enforcement. And then he responded to some pretty crazy traffic collisions and he went to court. So I kind of saw a little bit of everything. I didn't see anything too crazy, but what I did like, I saw his approach with people and in the community and his interaction, and I really was attracted to that. That hey, this is pretty cool. I want to help the community, and as a matter of fact, when I joined LAPD within a year or two, Carlsbad PD offered me a position, and
Oh, really?
but I declined it because I felt that LAPD had more to offer as far as an opportunity to really expand and promote and do that. So yeah, that's pretty much how it started for me. Is again another officer, had a sense of influence in my life, and then he gave me some good insights as to police officers and what they do and what they stand for and what it's all about. And so yeah, hopefully one day I get to run into him again and thank him for that. So uh, Dean Spinos, he since retired from the Carlsbad Police Department. Great guy. So I owe him for this because he probably has no clue the impact he had in my life, and therefore it's a domino effect, and then the
Yeah.
impact I've had in people's lives in my career. So
So
yeah,
how did you end up deciding to go to LAPD at the time? What made you apply to LA?
well, they had a LAPD, and they still have this program. It's the reserve program, and they start you at as early as 18. So I figured, you know what, let me be a reserve first. So I was just turning 19 at the time. I applied for LAPD as a reserve just to see if I like it, and I did. And I saw a lot of crazy stuff even early on. I saw a police officer from Hollenbeck, Joe Acosta. He died in an off-duty motorcycle accident, and but I became pretty good friends with him. And just he was in charge of the reserve program, and he was also in charge of the cadet program. And just to see how the officers, you know, they're a family, and they were there for supporting his family, and just I saw that firsthand, and I saw how cool it was, the brotherhood, sisterhood of law enforcement. I really liked that a lot, and so that really solidified in my mind, in my heart, that this is what I want to do. This is what I want to be, because it's not. It wasn't just a job. It's not just a career. it really is a calling. It's a calling in lives. And for me, there is a spiritual component to this. I do believe that the desires of our heart are placed there to begin with, by God Himself. And so I'm grateful and thankful that He put that desire in my heart. And every step of the uh, every phase that I was in during the selection process, I would always pray, okay, because I didn't get selected right away. As a young kid in East LA, I got hit by a car twice, so
Oh,
my legs were jacked up. Yeah, so little bow-legged, to be, I'm better now, but running was always a very challenging part for me. So I initially wasn't accepted because of my issues with my legs, but then I appealed it and I asked for an appeal, and they said, okay, we'll give you a second chance. Run 3 miles for the next 3 weeks, every other day or whatever, and come back and report to us. And I did that, and the doctor passed me. And so every step of the way, I would pray, hey, God, if this is your will, uh, that I become a Los Angeles police officer, help me pass this phase, help me pass this test. And even in the academy, we have exams, we have self-defense exams, we have shooting exams, we have,
yeah.
all these written, written exams. And, it's not the cakewalk. You do have to work hard and do your best. And so I would always pray every test. God, give me the strength, give me the wisdom. If this is your will, and here we are. I'm retired, so it's pretty amazing.
Well, I mean, at least you had that, faith going in, and you're able to like draw on just like your experiences, and I mean, held yourself accountable really to get through it. So I think that's good. So you get through is it academy, a full academy going through when you do a
Oh
reserve,
yes,
or is it
you know,
different?
there was another very I call it another turning point in my life where, as I mentioned, I was working at the Boys and Girls Club in Carlsbad as the program director, and they were doing the background investigation on me for me to join the LAPD Reserve Program. And I remember this lady, I forget her name, but she was an older lady working at the Boys and Girls Club, and she saw this investigator, this LAPD detective or police officer, talking to people about me. So I kid you not, man, she actually grabbed me by my arm and brought me into this room and closed the door. And I'm going, what's this about? Because I was the boss and she's actually doing this. And so she sits me down and she goes, huh, so you want to be a cop, huh? Says, listen to me. What I'm about to tell you, it's coming from a divorced wife of a deputy sheriff in San Diego County. So if you want to be a good cop, you better avoid the three B's: the booze, the broads, and the bills. And then she went on to explain those, the three, B's, and how that caused her marriage to fail. And then ultimately, he wasn't a successful deputy sheriff because of the bills, the booze, and the broads. And I appreciate that because, again, I grew up without a dad, and growing up without a dad, wasn't easy. But I always remember thinking to myself, because I know what it feels like to grow up without a dad. When I become a dad, I'm going to be the best dad I could ever be. So hopefully, my kids would agree. But so that really set the tone for what to expect. Because then I learned that early on, the moment that we decide to become police officers, and I'm sure you would agree, that from that moment on, we are walking on eggshells for the rest of our life. Because anything we do, on duty, off duty, our own time, it's always going to be second guess because we are held to a higher standard, and rightfully so. We are
Right.
a public servant, and with given a lot of trust and a lot of responsibility and a lot of authority. So any violation of that can really tarnish the badge. So that's what I learned. I learned early on that I better avoid these three B's because if I want to be successful, and I never forgot that. And there was a point in my career when I was a background investigator that I would investigate the police applicants coming in. On the ones that I knew I was going to hire and select, I would sit them down and give them that same speech. And it was pretty cool later on to see them, promote and see them go up the ranks. And they always say, "Hey, you know what? Thank you for taking that opportunity to give me that speech. I never forgot that." And so that was pretty cool.
That's good. Yeah, I remember hearing like people would say that. I remember in the academy, like, "Hey, avoid these like downfalls, like the three Bs." I remember that being part of it. I wonder if it's just like it's got to be across the board with I don't know if it's just law enforcement or if it's this first responder lifestyle because of how many hours people are working, being away from their family, being disconnected sometimes, and then falling
Mhm.
into these like pitfalls. So I think that it's hard for people to not fall into those pitfalls if you're not careful.
Absolutely, and you have to be aware of those pitfalls to begin with. So I really appreciate that. And for me, I always made it a my pledge, just for me, that I don't drink, and I don't drink at all, and so that helps with the first one. Um, so 2 out of 3, is good. Uh, 3 out of 3 is even better. But so yeah, so that's and you know I also knew early on that I wanted to become a detective. So with the LAPD, you have to do patrol for at least 5 years, and then you can start taking the exams to promote to the next rank, whether it's a sergeant, detective, and then from there you just decide if you want to move on to promote to lieutenant, captain, and the rest.
Right. Where did you work when you were in patrol?
So I initially started at Hollenbeck Patrol, which uh, just last Tuesday they have a monthly lunch gathering, and all these retirees from Hollenbeck show up and have lunch together. And that's actually pretty cool. I saw some folks that I hadn't seen in years, and just to see them again and reminisce and talk about the good old days, yeah, that was pretty cool. But so I started at Hollenbeck, but within I was there during when the riots broke out. As a matter of fact, we're the second academy class that we were activated during a riots situation. Because technically we were still part of the academy when the riots broke out in
It was
1992.
92, right?
April 29, 1992. So we're coming up on our anniversary pretty soon.
Wow.
And yeah, that was pretty crazy. Just to when you do the comparison of 1992 to 2020, you think we've learned some lessons, but man, it just history repeats itself, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it was Hollenbeck, but I was pulled out of Hollenbeck within about 2 months or so of working patrol, and I was tasked with being an undercover officer at a local high school. So I was posing myself as a junior in high school,
Really?
in a local high school. So I did two high schools actually. One was University High School in West LA area, and the first one was Van Nuys High School out of the Valley of Van Nuys.
You must have looked really young when you started then.
Yeah, I did. I did. I actually did. And actually have a picture right here of when I was in the academy. This
Oh
is
wow.
well, I'm standing in front of Judge Fittler's courtroom, and then just the other day I was in the courthouse, and I took another picture of myself uh, in front of Judge Fittler's courtroom again, and it was actually pretty cool.
That's
But anyway, yeah. So working that assignment was actually pretty crazy. Stuff that I can't see myself doing that in this environment today because it is crazy out
what would
there.
they do? Like I don't even know how they would like what would you is it because I haven't seen I don't even think they've done that at our department, so I don't know how they would do it.
Yeah, we work closely hand in hand with the LA Unified School Police, and we kind of use their resources to kind of get our way in. But I just registered like any other kid, and I just played like, hey, my mom and dad don't care about me, and when they ask for my parents to show up to fill out the paperwork, I says like, they're not gonna come. Are you gonna, I'll just play the sad story. Hey, are you gonna really not? You're not gonna let me want to come to school? And they said, okay, fill this out and just sign here like it was your parents. And that's how I would get in and just enroll. And then I remember my very first day at Van Nuys High School, they made me go through like a check-in process, registration process, and 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 they said go see the nurse. So I go see the nurse, and I remember I'm playing the role of a 16-year-old, maybe 17, I forget, but I'm actually 22 at the time, and 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 the nurse gives me a piece of paper and a condom. I'm like, what's this? Condom? Don't you know what a condom is? Well, no, I know what it is, but the adult in me is like, why are you giving me a condom? Just so
Yeah.
you could, save sex. I go, crap. So so I remember, oh crap, I had to play the role of a 16-year-old, not a you know responsible adult here. But yeah,
It's
so
funny.
that was pretty good. And the very first kid in my classroom, I think it was math class, and pulls out a line of cocaine and snorts it right in front of me. I go, oh wow,
What?
that's gonna be easy. I go, that's gonna be my first target. And sure enough, he's the one that sold me my first you know narcotics transaction, and then we arrest him at the end of the semester. So the idea is to go in there and make as many buys as you can to see how many people we can get that are dealing drugs on campus, and that's how it worked out.
Wow. How many people did you arrest?
I remember it was probably somewhere in double digits. I just can't remember, but it was, we were busy,
That's
and
crazy.
yeah, and yeah, I was driving to school at Trans Am, so it was hard to get people. The people wanted rides, and they wanted to go places, and they wanted to ditch and do that. It was very challenging, but you got to stay as safe as possible. But yeah, it
Yeah.
was some crazy stuff.
So did you have a team of people with you, or you just by yourself?
We were by ourselves, and we just carried a pager. Back then it was a pager, and that was a way for us to get messages from our detective, who was we would have to check in at least twice a day for safety reasons, and then yeah, I have to go find a payphone and call the office to check in, and then we would check in the morning and check in after school, and then check in when we were in the watch.
Wow.
But no, we were there by ourselves, and we were not allowed to carry any weapons or guns, obviously for obvious reasons. And then you know definitely don't carry your ID. So you were on your own, really.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah, it is.
I don't think I've talked to somebody besides watching movies. I don't think I've
It-
talked to anyone that's actually done that.
yeah, it's a real 21 Jump Street,
Yeah, for
for
sure.
sure.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah, I couldn't imagine people doing that in this day and age. Like, I don't even know, like with cell phones and all this other stuff going on. Like, I don't know. I
yeah,
feel like,
but I bet you they would uncover all kinds of stuff, not just drugs.
oh yeah,
I'm sure all kinds of stuff is happening on campus, and I don't think I think that program was shut down because of that was the beginning of what the wokeness we see now today. Because Mayor Antonio Villagrosa, as soon as he took office, he disbanded that unit. Again, it was just to let kids get away with stuff. It's like, really, it was bad.
yeah. So then, so you did that right away, basically. You said like 2 months when you're out there in Hollenbeck.
I did that 2 semesters in Hollenbeck, and then after that, I stayed with the program, and then we just did what we call street narcotics. And because I was so young, I was used to target individuals who were selling dope to youngsters, to young kids. So we would investigate all the narcotic clues that would come in when it would list either juveniles selling drugs or adults selling drugs to juveniles, and then I would go in and try to, in an undercover capacity, try to infiltrate that, and that was pretty. That was pretty interesting. We had some good times.
That's cool. And then, so you did narcotics there, and then what happened after that? What was your next step?
Well, I went back to Hollenbeck as a patrol officer, and I worked patrol for a total of about 4 years. So I didn't do a lot of years of patrol, which include about maybe 8 months assigned to the Hollenbeck Crash Unit. That's back then we used to call the Gang Suppression Unit Crash, which stood for Community Resources Against Street Hoodlums. It was a name that was created under Chief Daryl Gates.
Do we still call them street hoodlums?
Well, not anymore. No, it's no longer Crash. They just call it a gang unit now. They just call it just a simple, basic gang unit. But yeah, so that was again another the beginning of the wokeness that we see now. So blatant out there, and it's sad. We now people are advocating more for criminals than they are for victims or law-abiding citizens who pay taxes. They're advocating more for those that violate the law and create chaos and you know riots and stuff, instead of supporting our law enforcement officers.
And I think it's crazy. I think every day when we see people who are getting arrested and then getting let out like a day or two later, and you're like, what is going on around here?
Yeah. So right after Hollenbeck, you some cases in patrol kind of stay with you. There was one on a Christmas day, so it must have been, I want to say, 1994 on Christmas Day, because I left in the middle of '95, so it must have been like '94 Christmas Day. I was just out of roll call. I was still putting gas in our police patrol car, and my partner was still making his way to the car. We already had decided that he was going to be the driver, so I was trying to get his attention on, we call radio simplex, saying, "Hey, Troy, we got to go. We got a hot shot." It was a code 3 call that came out, and it's a really great. It's going to be a good call. When I say a good call, I mean the fact that it's not going to be a false alarm or anything like that. Because even the dispatcher, the RTO, we call him, she was breathing heavy and she was like trying to get the words out. And
Yeah.
I go, "Man, this sounds good." And she, beep, 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 Hollenbeck units and 4 Adam 15, shooting just occurred, 2 victims down, and fire department, responding, blah, blah, blah. And wow, Christmas Day? I'm like, really? And we get out there, and sure enough, as soon as we get there, and it's out in El Sereno, so we had a good distance to drive. The fire department's outside. The fire captain, I won't forget it. He says, "Hey guys, we're not going in until you clear it. We were here last year, same day. Their 16-year-old committed suicide with the rifle, so we're not going to go in there until you guys clear it." I go, wow. And we get in there. There's kids crying everywhere, and there's uh, there's smoke from the residue. The guy ended up shooting his wife point blank with the shotgun, and then took the shotgun, shot himself, but he only shot half of his face off, and he was still alive. And the partner I was working with, he's a great guy. His name is Troy Gaetan. Well, there's a little inside story to this. A couple years prior to this incident, Troy was involved in a situation where he recovered a shotgun after a vehicle pursuit. And when he recovered the shotgun, it accidentally discharged and it
Oh my
his
goodness.
shot off 1 or 2 of his fingers of his hand. And honest to God, when I said this, I wasn't even thinking about that, but I was I was going back to my background and my history working with kids and whatever, and I saw these little kids crying, and it was a mess, it was chaos. I thought, hey, you know what? I'll take care of the kids, and I saw the shotgun, to my right, and I said, "Troy, why don't you grab the shotgun and secure it?" He comes up to me, he goes, "Fuck you!" I go, "Oh no, oh, no, no, Troy. Okay, okay, I'll get the shotgun, and you get the kids." But it didn't even dawn on me at the moment
That's so funny.
that that's what he was thinking about. It wasn't until afterwards, just down the street. Now we're waiting for the detectives to come out, because now we got a dead body there, and we're outside, and only this is like only police officers could understand this. So we're outside waiting for the detectives, and it's a secure crime scene. And there was a kid that lived down the street who happened to be one of our cadets. And since he lived down the street, he's not bringing out. It's Christmas, right? So he's bringing us tamales and buñuelos, and so there we are. We're eating. And I remember as I was getting ready to take a bite, and I saw Troy's hand. It reminded me about his accidental discharge. And I says, "Oh, Troy, dude, I am so sorry, dude. When I asked you to do that, I wasn't messing with you or screwing with you. Or please forgive me. That's not what I was thinking." Now we laugh about it, but it just those are comic relief situations, right? That we could
Yeah.
use that kind of distress ourselves, because we see all kinds of crazy stuff, and sometimes some things are never unseen again. And so I still see those images in my mind. The poor wife and blown up, and these kids crying, and yeah, it's horrible.
Yeah. I know some things you just don't leave you, at all. I'm curious about his hand though. He lost two fingers.
Yeah, either 1 or 2 fingers, but yeah, but he's fine. It wasn't
He was
as
still able to work.
yeah, it wasn't a shooting him, so I think he was able to work still. So they cleared him to come back. And he, Troy, I believe he just retired maybe a couple of years ago from working at Major Narcotics. Great guy. Um, I'm glad I got an opportunity to work with him. Hopefully, we could connect sometime soon. But yeah, I was hoping to be able to learn when he would have his retirement party because I wanted to share that story so bad. That's hilarious.
That's funny. He thought you were messing with him.
Yeah, yeah, pretty good. Yeah, so after that, after working home back patrol, I did a stint at backgrounds for about 2.5 years, investigating the background investigations for police applicants, and that was the beginning of my investigations. I got to see one of the actually probably the best polygraph examiner ever to exist, and that is Irvin Youngblood. He was our polygraph examiner, and back then we didn't polygraph all the police applicants. We only polygraphed the ones that had issues come up in their background, and there was some adverse information that needed to be somewhat resolved or clarified,
Okay.
especially if we learned about something that's adverse or negative and they deny it. Okay, well, let's go on the polygraph and see if you're denying it is actually true. So by watching Irv Youngblood conduct these polygraph examinations and then the interrogations afterwards, man, it really inspired me to want to become a detective because I learned a lot from him. As a matter of fact, one of the very first cases that I the first confession I ever got was because Irv Youngblood couldn't get this guy to confess, and we had information that this guy who was a police applicant, believe it or not, was part of a ring of ATM burglaries. They were committing ATM burglaries because he worked for Wells Fargo Armored Card Services, and so it was an inside job. So they would hit these ATMs with inside information, and they got away with millions and millions of dollars.
Wow.
And that's the information I uncovered. And Irv gave him the exam, and this guy failed it miserably. So Irv went in there to try to get him to confess, and he wouldn't give it up. So I remember Irv says, "Hey, I tried my best, but he's not giving it up." I says, "Well, do you mind if I try?" And I could tell he was a little annoyed by it. Well, be my guest. So I said, "Okay." So I go in there,
That's funny.
and within 15, 20 minutes, the guy, I pushed his button somehow and confessed.
You know what you said? Do you remember?
I just yeah, because I think I played to his ego, because he came off as a supposedly proud Puerto Rican and this and that, and I don't exactly remember what I said, but I remember I was attacking his manhood, and he wasn't man enough to tell the truth. And I said, "Look, the other guys already got in prison. I already talked to them. They're in prison. They're serving time. You got away with it. So that's it. I mean, why don't you be man enough and you have all this money, you have all these boats, you have all." And I started just, and he said, "All right, fuck it, yeah." I told him which ones to hit. I would say hit this one and hit that one, and and it was like, and Irv Youngblood is watching this, and he's like, "Dang, he did good." So that really was what got me going, and I started to go to all these interrogation schools, Batty and all those, and I, I I love getting people to confess and or to the truth, because we follow the truth wherever the truth leads us, and if the truth leads us that somebody did not commit a crime, then man, I'll go there.
Yeah.
And I've done that many times. There's many people that were exonerated because of my investigation, and then there's others that are still in prison today because of what they did, and I just helped them get there. I didn't put them in prison; they did. They put themselves in prison by the evil, violent crimes that they did. And so yeah, that's how it all started for me. And then when I made a detective for the very first time in May of '99, I was assigned to Newton burglary for 1 month, and then they asked me to join the sex crimes unit in the following month. So from June of '99 till today, I've been investigating sex crimes. And from uh, 90 from 2004 2005, I was investigating not only sex crimes but crimes against children, crimes of physical abuse, sex abuse, and murder of children, including the sexual exploitation of children. So
I feel like that's a long time. I mean, is it normal for people to stay in that field for that long? Because I mean, I feel like if you would get worn down by what you see every single day, 20 plus years, the same type of work.
Yeah, you know what? It's not that normal, and then but beginning to notice that many people do stay for a long time because you know what? It really takes about 7, 8 years to really feel like you got a handle on it, to build some sort of an expertise on it, because there's a lot to learn in these investigations, and they're very complex and so many different angles. And so, I mean, just when you think you've seen it all, and you don't, you see something else. And um, I thought I seen it all, and then I still, even now working on the civil side, and it's like, you know, I still see it, unfortunately, because what we find out here on the civil side is most victims, it's more common that victims of childhood sex abuse or sexual assault, they don't talk about what happened until decades later, and sometimes until they reach age 50. There was a study done in, I believe it was in Germany, and the study showed that most victims never talked about it until age 51 for the very first time.
Really? What
And
what about at that age is key? Do you think? Like, what is it?
it could be, a couple of things, midlife crisis, and now they just, they see their own young children, grandchildren, and maybe they see a connection and they don't want them to suffer something, so they go out and how they say it. Or, like in our case, there's this bill called AB 218 that allows victims to sue their offender or anybody else that played a role without any statute of limitations, going back as far back as they want on the civil side. So when people learn of that particular bill and that information, many of them started calling and getting forward, and we were the first persons they ever told during our intake process, and that's pretty phenomenal
Yeah.
situation. And it just breaks your heart, and the pain is still there, and it's still fresh, and it's
Yeah.
still very painful. And yeah, it doesn't matter how much time, but you do see a
It's
sense
life
of,
altering. I think
yeah, yeah,
victims is life altering for them.
absolutely. And one of the things that has motivated me to do what I do is I actually allow myself permission to feel their pain, um, because that's what drove me to fight for their justice and fight for And I was very open with my victims. I told them, hey, you are the most important case I'm going to investigate. I made that very clear to them. I wanted them to know that that's the approach I was going to take. That I'm investigating the most important case, yours. And I went a long way, because when you get the victims to cooperate and tell you their story, the more likely you're going to be able to solve it. Now, you may not always get the outcome that they want, and I'm always very careful not to make any promises like that. But you know, because sometimes we just can't get them the justice that they want,
Right.
or clear it. But at very least, we help them through that journey, and let them know that we give it our best shot.
What was your process for that? You said like you allowed yourself to feel their pain. Like, what was your process for that?
Well, when I would hear them tell me their story, and when I hear their story and I feel their pain and they start crying, I think many people try to build barriers to kind of protect themselves from that. But and then I would give them access to me whenever they wanted. So they had my cell phone number, my email address, and if they felt comfortable calling me, texting me, email me because they had a question, or they were just wondering what's going on, anything, or even if if they just wanted to vent, if they got any triggers, anything sets them off, and it really went a long way, because they were just not. They felt like they were just another case or another number when I was on the case, and it paid off dividends, because you know it's one of those things where I kept in contact with some of my families that I've helped out throughout the year, and we still communicate either through Christmas cards or social media, and then just to see them where they're at now in their life, as to where they were when I first met them. Man, it's just amazing. It's just, and I tell them, I says, look, because many of them were harmed by somebody they knew, somebody they loved.
Right.
It was either a parent, a family member, or a grandfather, somebody that they loved and trusted. And so uh, there was a phenomenon where the mothers, I could count on one hand, after all these years, the amount of times that a mother actually did the right thing and support the victims, I could count that on one hand, which it's a sad commentary. So it means that many of them showed support for the suspect or the perpetrator in these cases than the victims themselves. So that was an added trauma, an added violation to the victims. So I would always say, say, Mija, you've been through a lot. I couldn't even imagine what you must be going through. But I can tell you that I have no doubt that when you become a mom, when you become a parent, because of your experiences in life, you're going to be such a great mom. You're going to love your children. You're going to provide a loving environment, a secure environment. And, just trust me on that. And then to see that actually play out now with some of these families that I kept in contact with, it really blesses my heart, and it made it, very worth the sacrifices, because there was a lot of sacrifices. Being on call, being called
Yeah.
out at crazy hours on weekends. Missing the birthdays, the holidays. But at one point, the toughest year for me was 2016, and if you want, we can talk about that. But that, there was a lot of sacrifices that we as police officers, detectives, we actually do make, and sometimes at a very deep cost. But fortunately for me, I recognized there were times where I needed help and times when I needed, to reach out. And yeah, because for me to get past 2016 was sort of a miracle.
I definitely want to touch on that. I had a quick question before we touch on 2016. What were there any cases? Well, it seems like, first of all, I want to recognize that it seems like your compassion for people and the children and the families. I think that it really bleeds through, shows through in who you are, and that's really probably what gave people not only a sense of like an outlet to talk to somebody, but really like that closure. Even if you weren't able to give them the result that they wanted at the end, just giving them that
Right.
closure. And I think that doesn't go, like, it goes unsaid too much. Like, I don't think we acknowledge that for ourselves, like the amount of time and effort that you put into their cases, and you're able to give them that space. And really, like, that's what this is all about, like holding space for people. But just the ability for you to do that for them is super important.
Right.
So I want to acknowledge that for
Yeah.
you.
Well, thank
Uh,
you. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Was there anything that you had to see, or not in specific cases, but like, was there any times, and maybe this is about 2016 too, but like that you had to like take a step back where you're like, hey, I can't do this case. Knowing your father, was there anything that affected you where you're like, hey, I can't, I can't do this, or you just needed to do something different for yourself?
No, and if anything, it was just to give me a greater resolve to actually, do it. Because when I first attended, I was still a police officer rank, and I attended, I think, what they call juvenile procedure school. And during the juvenile procedure school, they talked about the sexually exploited child unit and what they do, and the physical abuse cases that they see, and the murder cases that they see. Um, and I walked out of there going, man, I walked out there with a lot of respect for the detectives that did, investigated those crimes. And I said, man, I remember saying it out loud. I said, I could never do that. And then little did I know that I actually could do it. So I think sometimes people underestimate, what they can and cannot do. And so I have no regrets in this assignment. And the way I landed this assignment actually was by a D3 named Maria Rivas, and she saw something in me that she said that you're good with people. I think you'll be a great investigator for sex crimes. And she sold it to me when she said, working a sex crime, sexual assault is like working a homicide. And I was sold because, as a detective, everybody has the goal of becoming a homicide detective. That's the dream. And that's what happened. So, when I worked robbery homicide division for 5 years, investigating very complex sex cases. And not to my own horn, but I felt it a great honor when my peers, my fellow detectives, were literally. I remember one time my partner, he's on the phone and then he hangs up. He was talking to somebody, then he turns and he looks at me and goes, what would Moses do? WWMD. And then that became like, so to me that they I think Moses would do this, do that, and I go, then now people were looking up to me for my thoughts, my experiences, my approaches and whatever, and that said a lot. And that's when I began to realize that I was gaining respect by the prosecutors, judges alike, and even defense attorneys. So anybody out there that's considering, or you're currently a detective, don't be intimidated by these defense attorneys. Go up there and shake their hand, introduce yourself before the hearing, before you take the stand, and let them know that you're not intimidated by them, you're not afraid, and take them head on. I mean, I got to a place in my career where defense attorneys would just tell the court, "No questions, Your Honor,"
Really?
during crossing. Yeah, and I would ask him later. I said, "Hey, man, I was looking forward to your cross-examination." He goes, "I know. That's why I didn't call you. You want to question me." I says,
That's
"What am I going to go up against you? There's no way." So, anyways, yeah. So, you just it's going to take you a while to become a solid detective. There's a lot to learn, but just my advice is you got to give it your best shot. You got to treat each case as if though it was the most important case, because that will keep you honest. And it ultimately it really goes a long way for the victim and the victim's family.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So in 2016, I was working as the night watch supervisor of a team of 4 detectives and myself out of the abused child unit out of LAPD's juvenile division. And that year, man, I got the worst cases ever in my career, kind of back to back. And that's when I began to see some signs of, my body speaking to me that, hey, that's when I realized I had high blood pressure. I had a situation where I felt I was having a heart attack, but it wasn't. It was just the fact that my blood pressure was so high that mimicked the symptoms of a heart attack. And but it was, and I probably hit severe depression. I felt it, um, and so I sought help. And one of the things that kind of helped me come out of it was when one of my psychologists said, I would say, why me? Why did I get these cases? Why was I the one on duty when this call came out? Or why did I get this case and that case? And why did I get these cases back to back? That was what I was pondering, and that's what I was reflecting, because it was hurtful.
Yeah.
And if I get emotional, that's um, those are some triggers. So, and then her response to that, the psychologist, she was awesome. She says, "Well, why not you?" I says, "I couldn't think of anybody better to be in charge of this investigation, because you handle it the best way anybody could ever handle it, and victims deserve that." And as soon as she said that, it really changed my perspective, my view on this. And that instead of seeing me as, woe is me, I'm another victim, if you will, I says, wow, yeah, why not me? Why, I did do all these things, and yeah, it was painful, but you know what? I got, baby, well, he's not a baby. His name is Jonathan Aguilar. He's known as the little boy in the closet from Echo Park. When he was found dead inside this closet in Echo Park, he was 11 years old, but he only weighed 33 pounds.
Oh my goodness.
And when we first see him, we think he's bruises all over. We later found out that those were not bruises, but on first glance and second glance, you think he's bruised everywhere. And that was just part of the body decomposing and eating itself up to survive because he was being starved to death, basically. And yeah, it was horrible. And it's just really sad that this poor kid, beautiful little boy who had a form of autism, but nothing too severe to cause this. And I'm being very careful what I say because we're still waiting for the trial to go on. Even though I retired,
Oh, really?
I already told the prosecutor. In fact, I connected with the prosecutor last month on this case because it's a new prosecutor. So I want to make sure that that new prosecutor knew that, hey, even though I retired, I'm coming in as your investigating officer on this case whenever it's ready to go. Thankfully, I have my boss is very supportive of that. I told him when I took this position here at the law firm that I still had about 4 or 5 court cases that were, either fatality or homicide because I did work traffic collisions for a while as well, and I had a couple traffic fatalities that are still pending in court. So in all, I think I have like 5 court cases still pending. So which I'm going to come back and still advocate for those victims. So yeah, so Jonathan, that was the first. It happened in the summer of 2016. Like I want to say it was August, and so it was very very tough case. It was so tough that we actually debriefed it with everybody involved in the case, with the criminalist, the photographer, the responding officers, and the responding detectives. We all got together with our department psychologists and we debriefed it, and it was much needed. And then on October 31st, 2016, this case really gets to me even just talking about it.
It's okay. Take your time.
Ruby was murdered by this guy named Ricardo Utui. So if your viewers and listeners want to Google Ricardo Utui, Utuy, he murdered poor Ruby at the age of 3, young child, and this guy was plain evil. Long story short, Ruby was accustomed to show up with her dad at their place of employment. Her mom and dad worked together at this large factory where they sew clothing. So it's a seamstress factory. And this guy, Ricardo Utui, was a co-worker that started working there just 2 weeks prior to this horrible day. And totally unannounced, unprovoked, when Ruby was there, he snapped and killed her. But prior to the Ruby's last act in her life was she had just arrived to this place of employment, to this factory with her dad. Her dad picked her up from the daycare because daycare closes at certain times, so he needed to pick her up and needed to come back to the factory to finish off his work. And something they did every day. It wasn't anything unusual. And Ruby, her dad bought her a package of cookies. So Ruby opened up her cookies. Her mom was there, and she gave her mom 2 cookies. And then she said, "Mom, I'll be back. I'm gonna go to Dad and give him a cookie." So she grabbed a cookie and she went over to her dad's workstation, which was directly across from this guy, Ricardo Utui. So Ruby gave her dad a cookie and then started to walk back towards her mom, and that's when Utui snapped and attacked her at knife point and stabbed her 3 times. All 3 stab wounds were fatal. And nobody really saw this happening because everybody's with their headphones working and all that. So they just somebody saw Ruby like running, and then the mom saw Ruby coming towards her running, and she kind of saw Ruby, this guy Ricardo behind her, and she couldn't understand why this is happening. And then all the mom sees is that he made some sort of motion. She couldn't even make out what it was, but the next thing she sees is her daughter bleeding, and she picked up her daughter and she's crying for help, and the guy takes off running, and so that's how it went down. This guy, took off. He was a wuss. He left his things behind and he ran away. And Ruby's parents tried to get somebody to drive him to the hospital, and they met the paramedics somewhere halfway through, and she ended up dying at the hospital. Um, but that was on Halloween, October 31st. Adam, when I heard that call come out, I actually was speaking to the stepdad of Jonathan Aguilar, the little boy I was just telling you about. I was giving that stepfather, an update on the investigation and update on some DNA results. And when I heard the radio call come out, because I was monitoring the radio frequency, I remember telling the dad, "Oh man, this call sounds pretty crazy, pretty wild. I hope they don't call me." But they did, and I responded. And I'm very grateful for the LAPD Newton officers and their gang unit, because I remember they approached me and said, "Sir, we're going to catch this son of a bitch. We're not going home until we do." And I already called my wife and said, "Cancel my, Halloween plans or whatever." Several of them did that, and that said a lot, for what we do. That's us. The bell rings, a child gets killed, all hands on deck.
Yeah.
And I think he felt the pressure. He felt the pressure. I was able to even get the judge on the line to give me a verbal warning, a verbal search warrant, and the judge didn't even know that we could do that. I says, "Yes, you can. I just got to record it, and I'll type it up later. But I need this. I don't have time to do all the documents. I don't have time for that. It's just so fluid. I need a search warrant for his phone records. I want to know who he called, who's called him. I want to be able to ping his phone, do all that." So the judge granted to me verbally. I told her, "I just got to record it, and you do your thing and swear me in, and I give you my affidavit verbally, and you tell me yes." And that's what we did. And so, um, and yeah, so we were on him. We were on him. So I think he felt the heat that he eventually surrendered to the Rampart station. Remember, this is Halloween, so the guy named Cowboy, he just retired out of Rampart, veteran police officer. I think by then he even had like 30 years on him. He's working the desk, and he happened to have the Spanish language interpreter on the line from our communications division. So as he was doing something else with another victim there, making some sort of police report, he says, "Hey, can you talk to this guy? This guy wants to say something. I don't know what he says." And he's confessing to this interpreter of what he did to Ruby. So the operator is looking up on the computer, and she was able to connect the dots. Oh yeah, there's a stabbing in Newton. So So the operator tells this officer that we know him as Cowboy. He's a great guy. He then says, "Oh crap." Working the desk, you never know what you're gonna get, right? So
Yeah, true.
he draws down on him and he calls for backup, and then they handcuff him. And in he had a little shoebox. In that shoebox, he had the bloody knife and he had a gun. So thank God that there was no more casualties out of this, because it could have been ugly had this guy opened up there with all these kids at the police station grabbing candy and what have you, in their little costumes. So
True.
yeah, that's Adam. And Adam, when I interviewed this guy, I interviewed the devil himself. I could feel it, and only those detectives that have been there know what I'm talking about. You could feel that evil spirit, that it was the devil himself. He even started talking about the Ouija board and all kinds of crap like that. And I recognized that feeling because going back to the early 2000s, I had a case where I interviewed the devil himself. In that case, I felt that same spirit, and so I recognized it right away. And back then I was a fairly newer detective, and now I'm more seasoned. So I just remember, this time you're not gonna screw with me. This time, devil. And I got him to confess, and he actually admitted to two other crimes with the very similar MOs. And when I made the press release, and I said, "Hey, we're looking for additional information. Anybody that knows anything?" I didn't give any specifics because I didn't want to give out any details that could um, contaminate the investigation, or contaminate someone's statement. But I just said, look, I just know that we're looking for somebody named Alex, and we're looking for anyone who may have had any history with this individual going as far back as whatever I said. And sure enough, the very next day, another victim came forward. She called me, hey, I saw you on TV. That's the same guy that attacked me at knife point earlier the year in March. He tried to kill me, but I survived. And I go, wow. And that case was also at a factory that sews clothes.
What was the
So
deal? Like, what did he have a reason, or he just say, "Yeah, I did"?
he's evil, you know. He did it. And I could talk about this one because this has already been resolved, and he's serving 27 years to life in prison, or 27 or 37 years to life, I forget. Which concerns me because now under elder parole, you know, he might be eligible to be paroled in 20 years, which is crazy. But he pretty much said that he has a daughter same age as Ruby, and DCFS removed um, his daughter away from him. So obviously, we now know why his daughter was removed. He was not someone that could be around children.
Yeah.
So he felt that uh, if Ruby's parents, if he can't have his daughter, then Ruby's parents can't have their daughter. It's just a bizarre way of thinking. And um, he said he alluded to some nonsense that the dad dared him to do it or anything like that, which is BS.
How old was
Um,
he?
um, in his late 20s, so he's pretty young. And you know, on a side note, about a year or so after the murder, his ex-wife, who has two children with him, called me and said, "Would you speak to my son? You know, he's 15 years old and he's going through a lot." I said, "Sure. I mean, bring him to me." And we had an appointment scheduled, but they never showed up. And when I called, he says he doesn't want to talk to you. I said, okay, I get it. I respect it. But I've always wondered, what was I going to say to him?
Yeah.
What was I going to say to this 15-year-old that his dad, you know, is incarcerated for killing a 3-year-old? Man, what do you say something to? What do you say to this
Yeah, I
poor
don't even
kid?
know.
He
I'm
must be
sure
going
you would
through
have
all
figured
sorts.
it out if you had to.
Yeah, and
I
let's
can
see, but
imagine. I
that
can imagine going to that, like as a father, just even as just a police officer in general, like going to that call because it's not affecting how it's affecting you. How many officers were on that incident? Like you said, all the detectives, people that were working the case, and these images don't leave you.
no, you know, what really made this case even more special for me and more profound was so I even called in my partner who was on a day off, and you know I'm known to crack jokes and you know kid around whatever. So when I actually called her to say yeah, I need you to come in, she thought I was kidding, and I says, look, no, I'm not kidding. This is a really awful case. I need you. Because she was my only other Spanish speaker. Because the person I was working with at the time was first day assigned to work with me. So, you know, I don't know what I was. I don't know if I had somebody, you know, knowledgeable, or am I going to have to, you know, train or what? So, with all due respect, I didn't have time for that. So I called and I authorized my partner Sandra Platero to come off from her day off, and she graciously accepted, and I'm glad I did. So she was tasked with going to the hospital to meet with the family, and I was still busy with the crime scene, and I was busy with the interrogation, and then it was just you know chaos, right? And the clock's running because now he's in custody, so we can't stop. We gotta get ready for filing the case. But I told my partner at some point, you know, go home, get some rest. I'm gonna stay here, sleep in the car for a little bit, and then we'll pick it up. And then I get a phone call. So this happened October 31st around I want to say 4 p.m. and then it worked in through the night, right, all the way into the night. So I finally told my partner to go home, but remember she was the only one that met the family, and she had all the information about Ruby, and I didn't know much. And I get a phone call around 7 o'clock by a social worker from the Department of Children and Family Services, DCFS, and she's inquiring about the investigation and who the suspect is. And I says, you know, what? On this one, you don't have to worry about it because it's not the father. Initially, there was a report that the father may have done this, but no, it was just a miscommunication. It was that the father was at the scene, but not that the father did this. So in any event, a referral went out to DCFS, and so now they're following up. So I said, no, you could close it out. I don't want you to stress this family out more than they already have to. The suspect is a stranger. But you know what? But now that I have you on the phone, Miss Social Worker, can you please give me her Ruby's date of birth, because I need it to fill out something for our reports that I'm getting ready to book some evidence. And she said, sure. And then she goes, July 17. And I go, what? And she heard it in my voice. That, I believe it. That's my birthday. So that was from that moment forward, it totally changed um, everything about this case for me. It made it more personal. And it just, then when I learned about Ruby, that she was also a preemie baby, she was born prematurely and she almost didn't even make it. That was my story too. I was a preemie baby and I almost didn't make it. And just all these little similarities. And then, we lay her to rest, and she's resting in peace in heaven, but her body's at the Forest Lawn there in Glendale. There I am, paying my respects. The person that was buried next to her died on July 17th. It's like, oh my gosh, it's like all these July 17 things. So, anyways, I became really close with the family, as you can imagine. Um, we have a special bond, and I got to give it to her older brother. Her older brother is in the process of becoming a police officer with LA Unified School Police, and
Really?
when I heard that, I was so happy to support him and encourage him. Pretty amazing. But yeah, so Jonathan in August, and then Ruby in October 31st, back to back, two tough cases. And then the nail on the coffin for me was, I'm not gonna believe this, but take a guess. How old do you think my youngest victim is of a sexual assault, sex abuse?
I don't even want to know. I mean, I know you're going to tell me, but I don't. I'm like, this is
Yeah, it's between 4 weeks and 6 weeks of being born.
that's
Well,
disgusting.
yeah, evil, disgusting. And make things worse, it's all caught on video and audio, and you just hear the baby screams.
Man, like, like, I don't even know if I can hear it. Like, I mean,
Yeah, it was awful. So that, so as you can imagine, Jonathan, Ruby, what's the very next holiday after Halloween? Thanksgiving. I just couldn't get into it. I was really down and out. We had a family gathering, and we have a pretty large family with, extended family, cousins, in-laws, and what have you. I just couldn't get into it. I had that survivor's guilt, remorse. How can I be enjoying, you know, the holidays with my family when Ruby's parents are going through hell?
yeah.
And then right before Christmas, I get this other case with the baby, and that's where I really, took a nosedive, and I was really depressed. But um, I got justice out of this. I arrested this fool because this case actually came to our attention to LAPD sometime in October as well, or maybe September, but nothing was done on it until I got my hands on it. And I got my hands on it because of a head prosecutor, or two of them actually. Two head prosecutors were reached out by the investigator that had this case initially with the baby, but they realized that this investigator needed help. And they said, hey, have you tried talking to Moses Castillo about this? And he goes, no. I said, I think you should. In fact, they called our office and said, hey, Captain, can you give this case to Moses? Because this one needs someone that knows what they're doing. And that's how I got it. Again, that's why I had that question as to why me, why me? But now I know why not me. But yeah, and I have a special bond with all these families now, and In 2018, I decided to make the move and leave this assignment and to go work with my buddy, my best friend, Calvin De Hesa, out of Central Traffic Division. And together we had a lot of good cases as well. But he asked me to come work with him, and so I did. And it was a shocker to everybody because everybody thought that I was going to retire there out of LAPD, and you know, some saw me as the face of child abuse, cases. And so I went to Central Traffic Division, and there again I met other families in very dark times. But when I made the transition from working sex crimes and physical abuse cases and murder against children, I invited several families that I've worked with in the past. I invited them over to have a barbecue with me, and just it was my way of transition, my way of kind of closing that chapter and moving on. And I'm glad I did that because I got to see something really sweet, special, and then they they see. So
Oh
this is the
wow.
family. So when you look at this picture, just at first glance, you think, "Wow, this is a beautiful family," but it's not. It's a combination of beautiful
Bunch
family,
Yeah.
yeah, and families that I've met in their darkest time of their life, and now you see them now, and I'm so proud of them that they become great moms and great parents. And although I'm sure they have their moments, I'm sure they have their good days and bad days. Uh, they are thriving, and you know, and like I said, and then they shared their experiences, and then they shared their gratitude of me. And when I heard them express what they had to say about me, it's really humbling, and it really it gratifies and satisfies my soul to see that. And so yeah,
Yeah, the impact you
that
must
was,
have had on all of them. I mean, can imagine just being having that direct
yeah,
contact with them.
yeah. And these are some really tough cases that in there is that baby that I only met. The baby I just described, the youngest victim. She's in that picture, and to see her now, and I'll never forget the very first time I met her. Um, there is a portion in the I told you this was recorded audio and video, and because it happened in a hospital setting. So, anyways, you could hear in one of those episodes where the suspect himself is saying, "Wow, she looks scared. She looks scared when she sees me." Well, no kidding. No fucking kidding. Even babies can sense when
Yeah.
evil is about to happen.
Was this a? I mean,
And
I don't know if you're gonna say, but is this a family member or a
yeah,
dad?
it was her father, 19-year-old
Oh
son
my
of a
god.
bitch father. Yeah, he was his father. And so he got convicted and he's serving life. So I remember seeing that and hearing that. And so I don't know why, but I met her when now she was walking. So she must have been a little bit over one, maybe one and a half. She was walking because she wasn't really talking much. But I remember feeling a sense of anxiety on the days leading up to the day where I knew I was going to see this beautiful baby for the very first time. Because remember, I never spoke to her doctor because she was just a baby.
Right.
There was nothing for me to do there. But we still kept in contact, and we invited her mom, and her to join us for our Christmas celebration that we hold every year. There was an annual Christmas party that we would throw for the victims that we would serve, that year, as a way of giving them a little sense of hope, a little sense of light, positive experience in whatever hell they're going through. And days leading up to that Saturday, man, I was crying. I would wake up crying for no reason, or just break down crying. And then I don't know what it was, but as soon as um, her mom saw me from a distance and she kind of released her daughter, she walked straight towards me. Right, I mean, like a straight beeline, and then she actually hugged me. And when she did that, it just released all kinds of uh, burdens and stresses, and I was so happy. It really turned from anxiety to a sense of special bond, a special love, and because I was afraid that she might even be afraid of me or whatever. Because again, I wasn't sure because I remember her, the suspect saying she's afraid of me, and so I don't know how she was able to at that young age feel free to hug me, and that was
Yeah.
very special. I'll never forget that.
We can definitely hear in your voice like how connected you are to all of it. And then you said you started this by saying like that you take on the victim's emotions and the feelings that they go through. And I mean, you can see it in your testimony today, like you know how you feel and how it comes out, like in the emotions and the constant, probably like the thoughts that go through your mind, and you're never gonna lose that. And I don't know how. I mean, you said it was 1 year, but I can't imagine you doing that 20 years or 18 years, however long you were doing it for. And now still, I mean, you're doing it again. You're still in it. So I don't
Yeah.
know what made you decide to go back to it? Like, what was there something that said with this
Well,
experience or?
well, like I said, my boss here, Samuel Dordulain, the former prosecutor, he brought me on to be his detective for sex crimes, and but little did we know, he had no idea, and neither did I, that we were going to get thrust in this chaos that's being created by George Gascon, and you know where he has really changed the philosophy of the DA's office and how they operate. They're literally operating right now as a second public defender's office, actually a third, because you have the public defender's office, you have the alternate public defender's office, and now you have the DA's office acting as a public defender's office because they're no longer advocating for victims and victims of crime. And I mean, just recently he started to announce that he's coming alongside victims who have uh, victims and crimes of unsolved cases. Uh, okay, I'm glad you're doing that. And so when he posted it on Instagram, I actually put a little comment. Well, does that include you're going to apply California law when you do catch these guys? Because are you going to apply the special circumstances, the special enhancements, the 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 strikes? Are you going to you apply the law like you're supposed to? Because a lot of these cases do have special circumstances or allegations that can be charged, but he's not doing that.
Right.
So now the law firm that I work with, we've been advocating for victims impacted by George Gascon's directives. And let me tell you something. I continue to meet family after family after family that had gone through hell, horrible. Here's another little boy. At this young age, he was kidnapped and murdered. And this is when he was a baby. And then this evil monster that did this to him did it to another child. So two children. This guy murdered two children, and before he murdered them, he raped them and sodomized them because you can't rape a male, but sodomized, sexually assaulted him. And George Gascon wanted to give this guy, um, number one, he took away the death penalty, and he didn't even want to give him life without parole. He wanted to give him some sort of determinate life sentence, like 25 years to life or 50 years to life or whatever, because knowing that all this guy has to do is serve 20 years and then reach age 50, then he could be paroled. So that's what Gascon was trying to do. Well, we advocated for this family, and so did the Orange County DA's office advocated because the other victim that he murdered was an Orange County case. So it was all over the news. But again, that's one example of many families that I've met.
Were you
And
able to take it to Orange County or no?
no, so he ended up taking a plea deal of life without parole. So yeah, which is something that Gascon didn't want. The strange thing about it, Gascon, special advisor, uh, Mr. Iniguez, made a representation to the court that this is a deal that they've been working on for months, which is baloney. It's not true. Um, but
Yeah, I
so
think
those
we're
are
having a lot of trouble with trusting the leadership, what they're saying these days in those positions.
yeah. So yeah, so it's just one of those things. So I always try to tell I try to pass on my knowledge and my experience to the younger ones. So I tell them, I says, you gotta really, you know, dig down and really treat these families the way you would want your family to be treated. God forbid, if your family had ever been involved in something like this, I'm sure you would want the best detective to give it the best effort, to give it their all and for justice. And so yeah, I mean you know that's pretty much you know a long story told in a brief moment. But now I'm still meeting uh, victims that are telling us their stories for the very first time, and we're advocating for them on the civil side, or sometimes as a Marcy's Law representative here. But so the fight continues, and so yeah,
Yeah. So what are
it's
you doing for
really
yourself? What are you doing for yourself going through, I mean, to avoid going through that depression again, that you had to deal with before? Is there anything doing to take care of yourself?
yeah. So I have this routine that I do every Sunday morning. When we attend church, there's this thing in our church service that we call worship, and it's during that worship time that I literally, very intentional, I pray to God and ask God to clean my heart, my mind, and cleanse my spirit of all this junk that I've seen. But then I began to pray for my victims, the victims I've helped in the past, my victims that I'm currently helping, and just as important, I pray for the victims that are coming in the future, and because they still keep coming.
Yeah.
So that's one way I do it, and um, I like to watch my son. I've coached youth soccer, and I've been a referee for youth soccer for 10 plus years, and that was my outlet. I got to see kids in a positive light, uh, share some life experiences with them in the game of soccer. I mean, you learn a lot of life lessons in the sport of soccer, and so that's how I was able to keep myself somewhat, sane and from going, on the deep end. And now I just began to coach my son's team again as their assistant coach. So I'm very happy for that. They're part of the club program.
That's cool. Yeah,
And
watching kids play sports is one of my one of my favorite things. Watching my kids
yeah,
play.
yeah, no, it is. And just not too long ago, and you never know the impact you're going to have, really. But not too long ago, there's this school teacher from high school at Fountain Valley High School. I've never met this teacher. We became friends through social media because several years ago, one of his students was killed on a traffic collision on the way to school one day, and this teacher, was very involved in trying to offer some support to the family and giving honor to the student and in his class. And I remember reaching out to him saying, you know what, thank you for doing this for your student. It says a lot about your character and about how you care and love your students. It's much appreciated. Just I wanted you to know that it's not going unnoticed, and we appreciate that. And that's how we became friends. Just this particular teacher, Mr. Schultz, and he now has some of my kids that were my soccer players in his classroom.
Oh, really?
And I guess he gave an assignment to his class to write about anyone they want to write about that has had an impact in their life, even now at this young age. And one particular student wrote about me, and the teacher recognized my name and recognized that he was talking about me. And so that teacher sent me a message on Facebook and Instagram, and say, "Hey, I just want you to know that this particular student, wrote about you and how you impacted his life and blah blah blah." And I go, "Wow, that's pretty cool."
That is
So
really
yeah, so that's why there's many stories I could tell you in my coaching experience that are going to be very very memorable moments for me because I coached all my boys. I have three boys, 24, 22, and 16.
oh
I
wow.
coached them all, and we have just some really fun memories some ups and downs in the life of soccer, and it's just been a great ride. So I encourage people to find an outlet outside of work, whether it's volunteering somewhere else or getting involved in your local church, local community-based organizations such as this was AYSO. Now we're part of club. So yeah, that's how I was able to. And I'm also very grateful for my wife. She was very supportive and understands it, and she knows when to give me some space, and she knows when she could draw me back in and say, "Okay, now we need you here with us." So
Yeah, that's good.
sometimes, yeah,
Well, I appreciate you sharing all those stories with me. I have a couple questions for you to end
sure.
this. One, I kind of brought this up last time when I saw you, but when am I going to see you running for office?
You know what? I did explore that idea, and I think it's going to be feasible for me if I do decide to run for local office in the city of where I live, and that would be in Orange County. So to start there for the local city council positions. So that's what I'm doing. But but I'm also helping people run for office. Like I support 100% to reelect our sheriff Alex Villanueva,
Yeah.
and I'm on Eric Early's campaign. That's Eric Early for CA.com. He's running to be California Attorney General. Um, I support Brian Smith. Right now he's a deputy sheriff running for board of supervisors. And I could go on and on. But if you want to know who I endorse, you go to my Instagram page. It's Detective Moses Castillo on Instagram, and it's just Moses Castillo on Facebook. I'm also on Twitter, but I don't really use it that much. You can find me there at Twitter as well by typing in Detective Moses Castillo.
Oh, cool. And last question. So I noticed that you wear the Superman pendant around. I've never seen you
Sure.
without it. Can you tell us what that's about? And does it go back to when you were a kid? Because that's when you brought it up earlier.
Oh, actually, I think it was my wife trying to be funny.
Oh yeah.
She bought it to me. She bought it for me as a gift for my birthday this last time, and my birthday coincided with my retirement celebration. So I think it was to show, hey, you're my hero, you're our hero, and yeah. So that's because it also came with um, with this. So
He's
uh,
holding a mug. He says, "To the world, you are a dad. To our family, you are the world."
yeah, so that's pretty cool. So those are the things that you want to you know invest in as your family as much as possible, and because that's what matters the most. And really don't major on the minors, because sometimes we focus too much on the small stuff and make them bigger than what they're supposed to be. But really, if I could just um, close with this: wherever you are in your life, follow your calling, follow your heart, follow your calling in your life, and just ask God to guide you. But it's a time to get involved. It really is. We can't sit back anymore and watch the news and watch things play out. We got to get involved. You got to vote. You got to do your research, and you got to encourage others to vote and vote the right people in, because we're suffering. Elections have consequences, and we're suffering those consequences big time.
Absolutely.
And we need to recall George Gascon. We need to, and it's not only here in California and Los Angeles. It's throughout the country. There's about 67 rogue DAs throughout our nation that are calling themselves progressive DAs, and all they're doing is advocating for criminals and those accused of crimes. I don't get that. I will never understand that. If they want to advocate for criminals and suspects, be my guest, but not
Be a
as
public
DA.
defender. Be a public defender.
Yeah, be a defense attorney, be a
Yeah.
public defender, go work for the Project Innocence or something, which I have a lot of respect for. I'm not in the business of putting people in prison just to put them in prison, and I agree. There's no way we could afford to have anyone that's innocent in prison. And are there some? Yeah, I'm not going to deny that they don't exist, but there is a mechanism for that, and there's systems in place to avoid something like that. So yeah, that's what I want to say is that and for you, if you are a victim of a crime, and I'm sensitive to the fact that hearing this podcast may have triggered someone's emotion, because you know what? One out of every third female has been a victim of some sort of violence, whether it's sexual assault or physical. Get help, please. You're not alone. There are so many resources out there for you, free of charge. And if I could ever help you navigate through anything, or walk alongside you in your journey as you recover and heal, we want to get you to a place from a survivor to a conqueror, someone who's conquered it. So that's that's Moses Castillo for you.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on, Moses. So yeah, so if you know a victim of a crime, sexual assault, or a childhood sex abuse, then get a hold of Moses at is it Dordulain Law Group? Where do you find them?
Yes, yeah, you can find us at the letter D, lawgroup.com. That's dlawgroup.com, or you can call our office at area code 818-788-4919. Area code 818-788-4919.
And I really appreciate all your service and then the service to the community and everything you've done for these victims and the families. I mean, everything they've gone through is just so hard, and you've been there holding their hand and being there as a friend and mentor, and I think that's really important. So I appreciate you doing that, and I think all of us want to go through our careers and have that kind type of impact on the people that we meet. So you've done it, and you're still doing it, and I appreciate you coming on today. So to find Moses, you can find him at as Detective Moses Castillo on Instagram and Facebook.
Yes.
Okay. And then if you have any questions, you can email me at sturgeonwellness@gmail.com. And you can find this at let'sgrabacup.com and on Instagram at Let's Grab a Cup and at AP_Sturgeon. Well, it was a pleasure speaking with you today, Moses. And we'll have more conversations in the future too. If you have anything, I'm always here.
Thanks, Adam. Appreciate it. And I salute you for your service. And Long Beach has a special place in Narla because I have family that lives there. So keep up the great work there in Long Beach. And thank you for what you do as well.
All right. Thank you, sir. All right. I'm going to end the recording real quick. Let me just get this outro music on and then we'll call it. See if I can do it right. All right, everybody. Have a great day.